you have to look at the independent media as an organism. It's a very organic network of people who come together to respond.
I think media, internet, these are ways of circulating ideas that would be fringe for a long time directly into public awareness. And that's what's so important about this type of media, because we're not filtered, we're not edited, we're not censored.
The advent of community media allows people to tell their stories in their voice.
Our world is shaped by our media. Media are the tools we use to communicate with each other, how we see the world. In the infancy of our civilization, our understanding of the world was only as vast as the tales of travelers or the stories of gods and ancestors. With the advent of graphic communications, we expanded our ability to communicate image and text directly with people in distant locations and beyond our individual lifespans. The printing press gave rise to the first modern mass media. With radio came sound, and with television, the moving image. Now we live in a world saturated with a media system that weaves the fabric of our culture. And this fabric is constantly being stitched tighter as we incorporate new technologies and recycle old ones. The internet is the centerpiece of our generation's media system. It has marked this era as the information age. Anyone with access to the net can be informed instantly of what is happening on the other side of the earth. This new interconnectivity of our global society brings with it a growing perception of the Earth and all its inhabitants as a singular, interconnected system floating alone out in space. It's as though our global society, now reflected in this vast mediascape, is beginning to form a sense of self-awareness. My name is Kyle Milo Brody. And for this film, I chose to investigate 3 organizations in order to look at how activists are using different types of media to get their messages across. Bread and Puppet, a radical political puppet theater based out of Glover, Vermont. The Sanctuary for Independent Media, an independent media center in Troy, New York. Free Press, a nonpartisan organization fighting for media reform in Washington, D.C. My hope is that by investigating the motivations, the tactics, and the impact of these organizations, I can learn to be an effective activist myself. Since the 1960s, Bread and Puppet has toured the country and the world in circus buses painted with flowers, presenting audiences with an exciting sensory experience that conveys sincere political and moral messages.
Welcome to the Sourdough Philosophy Circus!
There is a whole way of thinking and living that Bread and Puppet seems to bring to every aspect of their practice. Bread and Puppet has brought hundreds of thousands of people together at shows and parades across the country to celebrate and to protest, to entertain and to be heard.
We're a touring band of papier-mâché insurrectionists trying to ferment cultural insurrection, revolution through, I guess you could say, media, through our own media that is cheap and accessible and live media, real media that people look at, sit down and see
and listen to
in front of them and listen to in the real world.
Until I saw Bread and Puppet, it had never occurred to me that in its broadest sense, media just means anything that can store or transmit information. So, from something as simple as a person talking to an audience in the circus, to something as complex and intricate as a television getting a signal from a global satellite system. Inspired by Bread and Puppet, I went on tour with Hampshire College's circus, driving across the country in a vegetable oil-powered school bus. We made a great effort to express environmental messages in our show, but they just did not come across as clearly as we had hoped. Luckily, our audiences were fascinated with our bus and asked all sorts of questions about sustainability and alternative fuels. Even though our show missed the mark, our whole tour functioned as a medium to get our message across. First, I followed Bread and Puppet to Honkfest, a radical marching brass band festival and parade in Somerville and Cambridge, Massachusetts.
It's really great. Because all these groups, it's like the event really makes a lot of sense because all these like radical activist street bands that are all over the world and the country, and we're all doing the same thing essentially, and playing music on the street and being politically active.
You go to some of these big marches and rallies and it can get very heavy and very depressing, and then you have this beautiful band, like these bands that are playing today, and it's fun. And you remember like what's really wonderful about being human and being with other people.
Once more, Bread and Puppet Theater, giant puppets and manners.
Stew is a stew with hardly any ingredients. Simply scramble all the leftovers from the last administration and bake at the standard temperature until it acquires the familiar old taste.
Everywhere Bread and Puppet goes, they invite members of the local community to be in the show. Anyone interested shows up at the appointed hour to learn the steps and the moves. And wouldn't you know it, they let me in too.
We don't have her out there just kind of like looking around. It's
rather than just distorted otherwise.
Yeah, so we want the zombie face to be like really mean, like like a teeth.
Right.
So let's just like play right now and be zombies so we can just
USDOT, in preparation for their closing ceremony routine, will perform their dance of the spread of democracy.
There's something about being playful that opens doors to creativity. 3 years ago, I helped create Screwy, the Society for a Creative Realization of a Weirder You. We began with a campaign encouraging people to wear more costumes. To take it one step further, Screwy drew on the contemporary movement of public happenings and created a zombie walk, as well as a hug patrol and several massive pillow fights. All of these happenings spread an important message of fun and playfulness that I think our stressed out society needs. Even though playfulness can inspire ingenuity, it is important to know how to be taken seriously, so that when you actually have something to say, people will listen.
Puppets are associated with kids, so you let down your guard when you see a puppet show. What I've come in contact with, you let down your guard, so the messages that are behind it have a little more resonance. They get in a little bit deeper somewhere. But if you can get an audience to be there for a minute, you can kind of capture their inner child or whatever it is, and then hit them with something more powerful.
Although it can be cast off as just a puppet show, Bread and Puppet clearly has something more to offer, and it's not just the bread. They are not afraid to speak their minds and have fun while doing it. There is a freedom to go with intuition over reason, and a drive to push human creativity to its limit. Even though Bread and Puppet uses so many forms of communicating, their most effective one is simply that they embody their message in the way that they live their lives.
Provide a platform for just regular people, for labor unions, peace activists, the disabled, women, queers, all kinds of folks who don't typically get a chance to speak out about anything. So there's a place where they can do it and not get hassled.
In 1999, during the protests against the World Trade Organization in Seattle, Washington, the emerging indie media movement took its first big step. Citizen journalists banded together, broadcasting videos of police brutality via satellite to public access stations around the country. The Sanctuary for Independent Media is part of the growing movement of indie media centers springing up across the country. The Sanctuary engages its surrounding community by presenting a range of artists and musicians, as well as hosting collaborative art projects.
This past weekend we had a mural with the Iraqi Children's Art Exchange. This is the Iraqi refugee community who's here in our region, and American and Iraqi children came together and painted these two murals.
This particular project was a Digitizing Stories project, where young people came and talked about their experience and used the medium of photography and video to give life and give voice to their stories.
Marshall McLuhan is considered by many to be the father of media studies. In the 1970s, McLuhan posited the idea of a global village in which people from around the world could interact in ways that previously necessitated physical proximity. There are already 1.5 billion people who have access to the internet. Millions of new users log on every day, adding their own media content to the emerging global dialogue. With the help of public media centers like the Sanctuary, some voices are becoming clearer. At the core of the Sanctuary is a thriving community of media activists working together and individually, creating media to respond to the issues that they care about. One core member of the Sanctuary, Penny Lane, made a film entitled The Abortion Diaries.
I think thank you for coming. And the reason I wanted to do this was that, something I wrote in my diary when I was pregnant and I was like freaking out and I didn't think I could tell anybody was, it's not like having an abortion is dinner party conversation. And I just was kind of angry that no one had ever talked about it. It just seemed like I would have been able to handle it a lot better had I had those stories to access before I ended up in that situation.
Penny has screened her film around the country, bringing with her the stories of these women who have had abortions and giving them a place in the public dialogue.
Rallies for women's lives, for reproductive rights. There are these people who unfold these banners that say, abortion hurts women. Well, illegal abortion hurts women, and I am living proof of that.
Andrew Lynn, another member of the Sanctuary, was a collaborator on the film Still We Ride. The film chronicles the critical mass movement in New York City, a monthly ritual in which hundreds of people ride through the streets advocating for cyclists' rights.
Back on the sidewalk. There was one police officer grabbing my arm and telling me, drop the bike, drop the bike. Have you ever been in a criminal court case before? No, I haven't even been a juror on a criminal court case. Do you know why you're being arrested?
When the police department arrested hundreds of cyclists, Andrew's film crew was there to capture it. This approach transforms the medium of video from merely a way of relaying audio and visual information to a direct tactic for confronting injustice, simply by documenting it.
Well, the Yes Men have struck again. On Tuesday, a man claiming to be a representative of Halliburton gave a presentation at the Catastrophic Loss Conference.
Besides being a member of the media prankster group, the Yes Men, Igor Vamos is a professor of art and media studies at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and a member of the Sanctuary. The Yes Men begin their pranks by creating websites that mimic those of political and corporate establishments that they see as dishonest.
And we made the satire website, it looked exactly like Bush's, except for a few key differences. Like there was a photo on the banner, instead of him and his wife in front of the Capitol building in Texas, we showed him pointing the finger at black people.
Sometimes the Yes Men's websites are mistaken for the real thing and receive invitations for representatives to speak at conferences or on TV.
It's 20 years since the disaster, and today I'm very, very happy to announce that for the first time, Dow is accepting full responsibility for the Bhopal catastrophe.
The Bhopal catastrophe was a chemical spill in Bhopal, India in 1984 that killed nearly 20,000 people and sickened hundreds of thousands more. Until the Yes Men got involved, Dow Chemical, the owner of the company responsible for the disaster, had never made any substantial promises to help the people who had been affected.
The man appeared on BBC World claiming to be a representative of the Dow Chemical Group and said that the company was giving the victims of the Bhopal disaster a $12 billion sum in compensation.
I guess this whole thing has its roots for both me and Andy in stuff that we've been doing for a long time, which is trying to create public spectacles that in some kind of poetic way reveal something about our culture that's profoundly a problem.
Using cleverness and humor, the Yes Men have learned how to infiltrate the mainstream media in order to call for the change that they would like to see. The Yes Men are joined by other activists who have actually become entrenched in the mainstream media, often using their humor as a shield for their dissenting voices. From inside the system, they are able to call out the contradictions of the government, the media, and mega corporations, and directly ask them to change their ways. In the spring of 2008, the Sanctuary was illegally censored by the city of Troy for hosting Iraqi artist Wafa Bilal. Bilal had been invited as a visiting artist to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, where he presented several politically charged projects about the war in Iraq.
In this game, you will be able to recruit me as a suicide bomber.
When the administration of Rensselaer Polytechnic censored the exhibit, the Sanctuary opened its doors to Bilal to present his work and have a discussion with the local community about why the piece had been shut down.
It didn't occur to me that that the entire Rensselaer County Republican establishment would congregate in front of our building and essentially conspire to shut us down. We were shut down the next day.
The team at the sanctuary jumped into action. First, they organized a protest in front of City Hall. Then, working together, they created a documentary recounting the whole chain of events, including the filing of a civil liberties lawsuit against the city of Troy. The Sanctuary for Independent Media opened my eyes to the indie media movement. The activists that populate these centers are broadcasting their voices and helping others to do the same, promoting free expression and defending it when it comes under attack.
In 2003, nearly 3 million Americans from across the political and economic spectrum voiced their opposition to letting media companies get bigger.
Tens of thousands of letters have arrived at the FCC, mostly objections to the proposed rules.
The Federal Appeals Court in Philadelphia has temporarily blocked the government's new media ownership rules.
The House voted to roll back a new FCC rule.
You know, Free Press started in late 2002, and was created out of a frustration with the lack of quality critical journalism.
Free Press is dedicated to promoting diverse and independent media ownership while strengthening the public media and opening up access to as many people as possible. Free Press works toward these goals by informing the public of what the issues are and then rallying their support to influence policy in Washington.
We were relatively successful in stopping media consolidation, and it was amazing. It was because of grassroots work, it was because of great legal work by us and our allies.
We could just send out, an email to an activist and say, click here, tell the FCC what's on your mind, and hit send, and that's it. You make it that easy and you get a lot of people doing it.
There are so many new technologies that are making it easier for people to get involved. Computers, cameras, and telephones have all converged into personal communications devices that are capable of creating new media content and then uploading it directly to the net. Now, each person who has one becomes a potential journalist. Whoever is closest to the action can take a picture or a video and circulate it around the world in minutes. Even though Free Press has gained so much momentum, they're constantly looking for new ways to engage the public and record their feedback.
One of my main projects has been working on a digital divide project where I've been traveling across the country interviewing people who don't have internet access and what it means for their lives.
We're having the elections online. People are applying for jobs online. And they're asking people to apply for government services online. That means that there's a huge population of people who don't have access, who won't be able to engage in our society as a whole.
Free Press recognizes that in order to get people involved, it is important that they understand how media policy issues affect them personally.
You connect to the web through pipes owned by telephone and cable companies. But the deal is they're not allowed to mess with what's inside those pipes, whether it's Google or Yahoo, Lonely Girl or Bill O'Reilly. Everybody's website gets the same speed and quality. That's called net neutrality.
In 2005, the big media companies tried to dismantle network neutrality.
The companies want to set up a restricted fast lane on the internet, but only for their partners and services. Only sites who pay them a huge fee would be allowed to use it, making them gatekeepers.
When they first tried to get rid of net neutrality, 1 million people, including myself, that's how I got involved with Free Press, signed a letter saying, no, this cannot happen, and got involved.
Free Press is concerned with getting access to as many people as possible.
Our goal with these issues, universal access, it's getting broadband to every household in the United States. And one way to do that is white spaces. and white spaces are the unused TV airwaves that exist in the TV spectrum. So if you have one of those old TVs that just uses an antenna, you'll find, 6 channels, and then every other one is fuzz. Well, that fuzz could be internet service.
I went to the FCC hearing when they formally opened up white spaces for public use. It was one of the most boring experiences of my life, but I realized that the importance of free press is that it acts as a middleman between the public and the complex technical procedures of the government. Now that so many people are online, the way in which we store and share information is changing. As more and more people add data to the net, amazing new possibilities are emerging, enabling us to create vast stores of information with mind-boggling applications. Even though all this free flow of information is opening up so many possibilities, the downside is that it is challenging our system of journalism.
Also happening in 2009 is a real crisis in journalism, because newspapers still to this day do the vast majority of investigative reporting.
So many of our newspapers are dying off. We have 20,000 journalists who have no jobs anymore, and we're really looking at new models for journalism and how do we fund quality reporting.
One way Free Press is doing this is by hosting their National Media Reform Conference. The annual conference brings together the most outspoken figures in the media reform movement to rally awareness, share experiences, and network the activist community.
New relationships, new power dynamics, new media which exists not only to inform us, but to transform us, so that when we hear it, when we see it, we're not just taking in that information, but we actually change the way we behave, change the way we interact with the world.
Free Press showed me that media policy is a much more important issue than I thought, because the corporations still have so much power. Now that media has become so deeply integrated into our lives, media policy is an issue that affects nearly everyone. Free Press illustrates how powerful people can be when they use these new tools to build a movement. Each of these groups interacts with the world using different media tools. And although they focus on different issues, they are all dedicated to building social movements by sharing knowledge and encouraging people to get involved. There is something powerful about standing up for what you believe in. For me, it started by walking across Massachusetts and documenting a movement grow from just a few to a river of people, unified by a message of global concern. Digital technologies are opening up new possibilities for activism, because now communities of people can collaborate from distant locations and yet still speak collectively. Even though the world looks so grim these days, these social movements are getting stronger. I believe our generation has the skills, the tools, and the courage to take on the difficult challenges that will face us in the years and decades to come. The winds of the world are shifting. As the stench of war and fear still hangs heavy in the air, there is a new breeze of hope and determination blowing through the atmosphere. What I've learned from making this movie is that in order to get a message across, it must be expressed through a medium that is clear and understandable to the audience. I've also learned that having access to digital media and the internet is a privilege, because it enables us to share our lives and our voices with networks of people around the world.
Today, I present to you Team Human Beings. What you have to do to be a member is use the resources available to you to help protect and take care of the Earth. So, today, our resources are our hands. So what I'm going to do is pass the earth ball around, and let's see if we can get it all the way around the audience without it blowing away or getting popped. Take care and protect. All right. Bye, earth ball. Be careful. Careful, careful.
If anyone can fix the problems of our little blue planet, it is us, human beings, communicating and working together.
And now, on with the show!
Kyle, you want to tell me about?
You tell them about him.
It's Team Human Beings. Team Human Beings. What station this is going to be?
It's a project for college. It's a feature-length documentary.
Oh, suppose you're in college? What college?
Hampshire College.
Right now. Hmm?
Hampshire College.
Huh?
Hampshire.
Hampshire?
Hampshire College.
Wow.